Hello, this is Don Victor, author of Drawn to Win, host of the podcast Drawn to Win, the director of the Academy of Composition, and the creator of the Core 80 Experience, also known as the See and Grow Rich in Art video course, which you can find out more information at core80.com. This is the Drawn to Win podcast, where I have the incredible privilege to draw artists from around the world into fun and meaningful conversations around art and life, and yes, maybe even a little food. You can hear us each week on iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, and YouTube. So make sure you subscribe so you always have a seat among friends. Let's get into the show. All right, Joe. Well, welcome to the show. And so, Joe, let me ask you a quick question. What are you currently working on in your studio?
I'm currently working on a 16 by 20 trompe-l'oeil piece that is a toy motorcycle sitting on a shelf with a dog with goggles on the background. I do a lot with the dogs, and this will be currently going to Robert Lang show in June.
Oh, wow.
Trompe-l'oeil show. Yeah.
That's awesome.
In Charleston, South Carolina.
Now, for anyone who's listening who doesn't know what trompe-l'oeil is, how would you explain that to them?
Technically it's French for trick the eye, but it's a three-dimensional illusion on a two-dimensional surface.
That's awesome.
So it almost looks like you could grab it off of there, or pull a piece of tape off, or anything. It just looks three-dimensional on a two-dimensional flat surface.
Awesome.
William Harnett was known for it, and Pato was known for it. So it's been around for a long time, and there's quite a few artists doing it these days.
And when did you come upon it and say, "Ooh, that's something that I feel called to"?
I always liked William Harnett's work, and then I met a guy when I was going to college, and he was doing instruction, and I ended up taking a 4-year apprenticeship with him, and I saw one of his student shows one time, and as soon as I walked in, I said, "That's what I want to do."
Nice.
I was originally going to be a wildlife artist because I really like animals, and but I wanted to incorporate the animals with some trompe-l'oeil also.
Now, I noticed that on some of your images on your website, that some of them look like almost caricatured. Like the one dog, it was like a shaggy dog, right? And I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, like there was humor. You have like this almost this like photorealistic style, like or say skill set, right? But then like on some of them, like there's just this wonderful humor that's brought into it. It kind of, in a way, reminds me of the humor of Norman Rockwell, where there's almost a purity to it, and yet, but the skill that's executed, it just carries it through. Like, do you do that intentionally, or like?
Yeah, a lot of times I'll paint something realistically, and then in the background, or sometimes even in the foreground, I'll paint something that's more of a caricature-looking thing or cartoonish. And what that does then is, for the viewer, that makes the realistic object look that much more realistic when you add something in the background that's a little more offbeat or characterization wise. It will definitely help it to bring out the realistic part of it. So I do that on purpose, and my whole goal when I started painting what I paint is to I basically wanted collectors to look at my paintings in their home and bring a smile to their face, even if it's for a minute.
That's awesome. And they do.
So I do like that quirkiness to it.
Yeah, that's a great word for it. But it's interesting because it's not quirky like in a low beat, or even like in a weird way, like even like in a mom pop shop type quirkiness way, right? Like,
right.
But there's a sophistication to it. It's a very intelligent way of approaching the, well, humor is very intelligent, but and it is very strange, Jay. I've never met you before. And I just want you to know, like, if I'm saying this, there's absolutely no reason for me to, like, blow smoke up your ass. Like, I'm actually being very genuine in what I'm saying. Like, when I was scrolling through your work, I was smiling and I felt it. And the thing is, it's like, it happened more than once consistently. And then on your website, you have to like see more, and you click it, and a whole nother group of images come up, and it happens again. And I had the same experience. I was like, oh, this is cool. Yeah. Like, you've mastered this. You're able to trigger joy in people, and that's
what I'm incredible. Looking for. Yeah. It's I think sometimes the art is just, sometimes it's a little too serious, and without basically doing a comic strip, I just wanted to bring some sort of humor into people's lives if I could.
That's awesome. Now, do you sell prints and stuff of your work?
No, I don't sell prints. I have an agent, and right now I'm just under contract with her, so prints are not an option at this moment.
Mm-hmm.
I have thought about it, and but right now, no, it's not an option at this point. And maybe somewhere down the road.
And then with your agent, like, do you just do one-off paintings for people, or do they go on cards, or like how are they used? How are the paintings used?
They're basically just used for gallery use and for collectors to buy. I don't advertise in any other way. I don't, put on cards or T-shirts or anything like that at this point. Maybe once my contract is up, I would consider doing stuff like that. But right now, it's just gallery sales, and it's a one-shot deal. That's the painting, and that's the only one that there is.
Understood. When your contract is up, do consider it, man, because I think it would have like a mass appeal to it, especially when you're doing the animals, unless you're with somebody who's like, oh, that doesn't look like my dog, but if it's their kind of dog and they have a really high quality work of art like you're producing with that effect on them, oh man, I totally see people eating that up.
Yeah, sometimes my work even is it's not even if you own the dog. I have a collector in Texas, and he doesn't even own a dog, and he's constantly buying my work for just because cool. Because he likes it and he likes to see it. I never heard of somebody not having a dog, and a lot of times I'll incorporate things that in my paintings that are deal with life in general that everybody could kind of relate to, whether you have a dog or you don't own that particular type of dog. There might be something in there that. Sometimes I do things from my own life experiences, but I'll use them in a symbolic way on a painting that really nobody knows, but they might, get the hint, and it might relate to them to purchase it.
That's awesome. That's good. So Jay, like, what got you in art, man? Like, what started this journey for you?
Well, I was younger, and my grandfather had raised me, and he had put me in art classes when I was young. And then, to be honest, I kind of drifted off, and I kind of went down a bad road for a while. And I was about 27 years old when I finally realized I needed to do something with my life. So I got into it a little late in life. And once I realized that, this is what I wanted to do, and I had the passion for it, I just went for it. But so I was late in getting into it, and like I said, I was 27. I started college for painting illustration, and then I did a 4-year apprenticeship. So, I just.
No, that's the second time you brought up the college and then the apprenticeship. You mind if I explore that with you a little bit?
Sure.
How would you, well, first of all, if you were talking to a 17-year-old kid who was like, hey, I want to go to college next year, I want to be an artist, right? Would you, which of the two would you advise them to go do?
I would advise them to find a style of painting that they like and probably do the apprenticeship. Find an artist that they admire and find one that actually does teach. or shares their skill. And I would have them do the apprenticeship because the college base is, it's good, but you have to learn math and science and all this other stuff. And also what happens is the colleges, they can't discriminate with one, I'm going to say medium. They can't discriminate with one genre. So they have to explore all of them to satisfy everybody. And I think that if you're really serious and want to become an artist, you should find that artist that you admire and somehow find a way to connect with them. And, if they offer some sort of apprenticeship, then I would go that route because that's where you're going to learn your skills and you're going to keep your most passion by doing what you love to do every day instead of doing these other things that you may not be interested in.
And that's really interesting. What I heard you say in there was the apprenticeship gives you an environment where the college doesn't, and an environment for this purpose to focus, to actually really, really focus in on acquiring specific skill sets,
Yes.
And narrowing that mindset to become laser focused on becoming really good at this. Where the college is going to give you a very general education,
right,
but not develop you into a sharp tool.
Right. They may, you have to study watercolor and drawing and oil and acrylic. And, if you want to be an oil painter, then I would just go for, find that person that's into oil painting and the specific genre that you like to do. If you're like figure painting, then find a figure painter that you admire and just try to work with them or study their form or their way. So
that's cool. Very cool, man.
Yeah.
Very cool. I have a feeling the college apprenticeship conversation is going to come up a lot throughout this podcast, not just this one specifically, but just in overall the podcasts. And because a lot of people who've gone off to art college, and I have a few students who we talk about this often, where they pay tons of money to go to a prestigious school. And then ultimately they just turned around and was like, what was that for? And
right.
They might have been working in the field for 20, 30 years, and then realizing that all that money, all that time, what they needed to learn, they didn't learn there, and
right.
It's frustrating.
Yeah. That's why you just go right for the goal and just, find what you really like to do and shoot for that.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome. Yeah, it's interesting that even though you were 27, I know there's a negative connotation to that story,
Yes.
Why didn't you go to school when you whatever. When I was in college, one of the things I realized was that the people who came in for graduate school were super, super focused, right? And it was like night and day. And most of the college kids didn't get focused until maybe the last 6 months of their senior year, because they're like, oh crap, it's over and I'm going to be in the real world in a minute, right? And so I would actually say maybe one of the reasons why you're so good is because you were older when you went to school and you could appreciate it. You had the focus, all those things were in line.
Yep.
And you got your partying out before you got there, right?
Yeah, there you go. I'm glad you picked up on that. That's kind of when I said I went down the bad road. I was just, I got everything out of the way and figured it was time to grow up. And that's when, I became passionate about it. Passion is the biggest part of it. I think, you don't even have to have a lot of talent. As long as you have the passion, you could do anything, whether it be art or any other career you choose. As long as you have the passion for it, you'll make it.
Now, when you say passion, how do you describe that? What does that really look like? Because when we say passion, we often think fuzzy feelings and but I don't get that sense from you that that's what passion means.
No, passion for me was hungry. I was hungry for it, and I knew that that's what I wanted to do, and I just had to figure out a way to do it. And so I want to say hungry. When I say passion, I mean I stayed hungry. And when you stay hungry, you want it more. if that makes sense.
Absolutely. It's like you
Yeah. So
consume it.
so that's what I couldn't get enough of it. And it's just, so when I say passion, that's all I wanted to do when I woke up, and when I would go to bed, I couldn't hardly sleep because I'm thinking of things, that relate to it. So it's, and I just stayed hungry and I stayed humble. And that's what passion is to me.
Wow. That's cool. Hungry and humble. Sounds like a good motto to have.
Yeah, right.
That's awesome. We'll get back to the hungry part at the end of the conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, man. So you went off. You had this great professor in college. Then you went and spent 4 years with him, apprenticing under him. What was next? What happened? What like? Tell me. Like, do you remember your first sale?
I do remember my first sale. I did an apprenticeship for 4 years, and I was contacted by who is now my agent, actually.
Oh, wow.
And I didn't know she owned a gallery at the time, but she contacted me about a painting I had just completed, and that was my first sale. But my first gallery sale was interesting because it was in Baltimore, Maryland, at a gallery called Benden's. And what I did is I put four paintings in my car, and I drove down there, and I walked in and I presented them to him, and he was impressed with it. And he said, "Well, I'll tell you what, we're having a show tonight." He goes, "Let's hang 2 of them and see how it goes." So I stuck around for the show, and I immediately sold 2 paintings right off the bat for the first opening of their show. Yeah. Now, I wouldn't recommend any artist that's young or just going into galleries to walk into a gallery with the paintings. They don't really like that. But I don't know. I just did it, and I had a feeling, and it worked out for me. Yeah, I was hungry. So it worked out for me, but I know a lot of galleries don't like that. They don't like when people bring paintings in, but I just did it, and I put them on the table, and I said, "This is what I have, and are you interested in representing me?" And that's when he said, "Let's give it a shot tonight." And I sold 2 immediately. So that was a great feeling for me. Yeah.
That's a great way that's like starting the day off right.
It was an awesome feeling.
That's cool, man. And then, have you been consistently busy since then, or have you had like up and downs? Or
I think in the art world, you always have up and downs. But I always stay busy, whether I'm down or I'm up. I always stay busy. I try to keep a consistent inventory, just in case I'm called for a show or anything like that, or any kind of competitions I may want to enter. I always try to have something on hand. So even in my down times, it's important to stay on the ball and stay one step ahead of things. A lot of times, it gets you down a little bit, and you may not want to do that, but you just have to keep rolling with it, and persistence will pay off.
That's cool. When you have an uptime, how would you describe that? Like, what does what uptime look like for you? How do you describe that?
An uptime is just numerous sales from different galleries, maybe even a magazine article, just stuff like that, or even entering competitions and having a couple wins or sales from competitions.
Nice.
But it's just having consistent sales in one spout of time.
Yeah.
It's an uptime, and then you may go 4 or 5 months without a sale. So that's what the artist's life is. You really have to learn how to budget sometimes, just because of that. Yeah, I always tell people.
Yeah, go on.
I always tell people I don't like the term starving artist, because if you're starving, it's probably your own fault for some reason or another. So I always say I'm either eating lobster or I'm eating ramen noodles.
That's nice. And you've adjusted pretty well then to this, like this ebb and flow then, huh? Like, can you feel it coming, and do you feel the seasons change, or does it just like one day is like, what's happening?
It's funny. I have this superstition. And what my superstition is, I'll find, like coming out of a store, I might find a quarter on the ground or a penny, and I'll pick it up, and I'll always like just grip it and put it in my pocket. And every time I have an uptime, I start finding all this change around on the ground.
Interesting.
And then I know I have an uptime coming. So I don't know. You could call it superstition, but it works for me. So it might be a little crazy, but that's just I just know I'm going to have an uptime when I start finding change on the floor, on the ground
cool,
somewhere. Yeah, it's kind of weird.
That's super weird, man. That's super weird. But you know what?
Yeah, but
as artists, we own our freakiness, right? We own it.
Yeah. Hey, I'll own it all.
Yeah, it's strange. Like, I like different kinds of music, but I know when for some reason I'm like, I'm listening to a lot of country music, right? That those are the times in my life when for some reason I'm going to end up going through maybe several weeks or even several months of very, very deep reflection into things. And then it breaks when I'm like, okay, I've had enough, right? And then the season changes, and it's weird. It's like I can tell when like how my soul's moving and what if it's where it's going by the flavor of music that I'm starting to.
That's interesting. Yeah, that's interesting.
You do that for 20, 30 years, and it's like, wait, you start to see patterns, and then you expect it. You're like, ooh, I'm going to learn something about myself now. what's
there
coming
you go.
Next?
Yeah, so that's neat how that works. That's like the change, the finding the change. Exactly. I find a couple quarters or something, and I'm like, here we go. This is good.
That's awesome, man. Very, very cool. I like that.
Yeah.
So right now, like, you started making your sales. You're kind of going through you're going through this thing. Where does where does Jay see himself 5-10 years from now?
I would at some point like to start producing, some, like you said, about prints or some things on clothing lines, maybe even.
That'd be cool, man.
Putting some of my artwork on some clothing options. So I've been looking into that. I'd actually like to write a memoir about my life, and a lot of symbolism that are in my paintings. I'd like to explain them finally.
That'd be cool.
I don't always tell them because some of them are very personal. But I'd like to set the story straight in a memoir. I think at some time in the next 5 years.
So let's tease the memoir. Let's tease the memoir, the future memoir that is here already. It just needs to be penned.
Right.
So if we're gonna get the audience juiced about it, right? They're going to be excited about this memoir. So tell us one of these personal things so that we can go to your website and look for it.
All right. Well, there's a particular painting called Horsefly.
Okay.
And what I did is it was at the time I was still studying art, and I didn't have a lot like a social life, but there was this girl that was interested in me, and so I went on a couple dates with her, and she didn't understand that I had to continue to paint. I just didn't have time to date and to go out. So she just wouldn't leave me alone. So what I did is I painted a comic strip of a horse, and then I put a little horse fly on top of it. And if
exactly,
if anybody knows in the summertime, the horse flies, how they're annoying and they just don't leave you alone. And so what I did is I just painted this horsefly on there, and I put Buzz Off on the top of it. So, because she just reminded me of like this horsefly that just wouldn't leave me alone, just no matter how much I tried to swat her away or just say, stay away. She just wouldn't go away. So I painted that picture for her. That's not for awesome. Her, but for the symbolism of it. So there's a lot, and then there's, some of them I have some love letters in them and stuff like that.
Wow, very cool.
But so that's a good example of that. And the one painting I did do, my dog kept getting sprayed by a skunk like 3 times in 1 month. So I did the one of the Campbell soup cans, and then if you look really close, there's a skunk there's a chalkboard skunk looking coming from behind the actual painting. It's called Summer Stalk.
Uh-huh.
And I got the inspiration as I was in the grocery store one night about midnight in a 24-hour store buying tomato juice to get the skunk smell off my dog. And it's inspired me to do this painting. And actually, the heirs of Campbell's Soup had bought it. So it was
I read about that you sold that. That's awesome. That's so
that's
cool.
The one. So There's some symbolism, and there's a couple other ones that are, a little more personal, but we'll wait for the book to come out.
Yeah, indeed.
Yeah.
That's brilliant, man.
But
I love it.
That's just sometimes that's just some little things I put in there that I might be experiencing at that time of my life, where I'll just I'll make a painting of it, and nobody really knows but me. And this is why I'd like to just do this memoir at some point to let my collectors know, and my family and friends know that the real meaning behind some of these paintings. It's not just a dog and a bone hanging or something. It's there's more into it than what it appears.
That's so cool. Cool.
I like these. Yeah.
All right, so we're gonna see that book within the next 5 years, then. So
I'm hoping. That's my goal.
That'll be a great one. Actually, it'd be great if you do that and you have the permission to actually then do prints of your work, so that you can tie the two together. And get people really into it, and then have them buy it so they could share the stories with their friends and things.
Right.
It's really cool, man. So, Jay, if you were talking to another artist, young, old, whatever, and you wanted to, give them some advice on something or recommend something from your experience, what's one of those key things that you think artists should focus on or work on to really own their existence as an artist?
Well, I would probably say a certain style, coming up with your own style. There's a lot of people painting, flowers and fruit and all that, which is great. But coming up with your own style that really nobody else is doing, I think is important. And I think that just being persistent in that style is important. You don't want to be painting flowers and then the next day you're painting, dogs. You want to try to stay a little, there's nothing wrong with painting flowers and dogs. You could do that, but just try to stay consistent in your style and stay persistent with it. And I think that's the biggest key to, expanding or getting your name known out there in the art world.
What do you think? What do you think being persistent in your style, being persistent and consistent in your style, what does that give the people who buy your work?
What does that give them?
Emotionally, what does it give them? Why is that important? Not only to you as the artist, but ultimately to the people who are going to buy it or represent you.
Well, the goal is to have a collector, whether they're in Santa Fe, New Mexico, and they see one of my works, and then they go to Dallas, Texas, and see another one of my works. The whole goal of it is for them to say, "Hey, I just saw something like that. That's a J. Davenport."
Okay,
you don't
gotcha.
want them to have to guess on who the artist is. So it's in staying consistent with it is you want the viewer to know who you are just by looking at the work without even seeing the name.
Gotcha. So where one might focus on the subject, and they might do that really, really well. But if somebody looks at it and they say, "Oh, that's a really great flower painting. Who's the artist?" It's really the subject that's capturing the attention, not so much the name of the artist. And
Right.
It sounds like you're saying that if you focus on the style, that becomes like your calling card, and then people will recognize you before they actually recognize what the image is about.
Right, right. And there's a lot of artists that I admire that I can see their stuff on, whether it be Facebook or in a magazine, and I'll know who it is before I even read the name of it. And that's kind of I think that's important to do. And eventually you'll get there with it. You just have to stay persistent with doing it.
Let me ask you this weird question.
Sure.
Do you consider yourself to be a very confident fella?
Sometimes. 90%. I'm going to say 80% of the time, no.
Really? Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, that's fair enough. Now that's general. That's all in life. Let's hone it into art. Okay, inside your art, how would you scale your confidence?
I'm very confident with my art. I know that when I sit down, that I will pull off what I'm trying to do. There are times where I'll start a painting and I will scrap it, and I'll just be like, this isn't going to work out. But I think that's in itself its own sense of confidence that I know that it's not going to work out. So it's not a failure to me. It's just knowing that it's not going to work out and it's not going to be worth the time that I have to put into it. So I wouldn't say that's non-confidence. It's confidence in knowing that it's just not going to work. And but in my artistic ability and stuff, I feel very confident. So sometimes I guess it is more of a life thing that sometimes I don't feel confident. But artistically, when I sit down and start a painting, I'm actually a little nervous sometimes. And I don't know if any other artists do this. I think there's more artists that, are a little nervous when they're starting a painting than we'll let on to know. But I'm kind of a brutally honest guy, and I'll tell you that I sit down and I'm nervous because I want to pull this off. And then once I start laying a couple brush strokes down, I kind of forget that. It kind of goes out the door. So I then become very confident in what I'm doing.
Nice.
It's just the initial start of it. I do get a little nervous and unconfident, but once I start rolling with it, it all goes away and the confidence comes back.
That's cool, man. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's really, really cool. The reason why I was asking that is because I was picking up from you that your ability to go to that gallery and put yourself in that predicament, which isn't wise for most artists. One, because they can't carry that skill, and they don't have the energy to do it in the sense of they would be a pushover, right?
Right.
And I don't get that sense from you. And so that's why I was asking that question, because when you were explaining the idea of style, I was thinking about somebody, let's say when you're drawing and you create a line, right? When you create a line, there's different ways to create a line. And one way of creating a line is when you see somebody draw a line and it's just one single act, like what they thought, they knew where they wanted to start and end, and they execute it. It's one straight line versus another person who is hesitant, right? They're unsure.
Right.
And so they're trying to draw a straight line, but there might be 3, 4, maybe even 10, 15 little wiggles in that little line, right? And each wiggle is a hesitation or a thought, where the other one is one single focused thought.
Right.
And potentially the artist who is focused on developing their style, their voice, is confident in their ability to execute it consistently, right? Because they can have that conversation. Like you said, like you have confidence that if you feel that this isn't going to work, you're not going to sit there and try to convince yourself that it's going to, and then waste your time on it, right? You're going to move on. And you trust yourself enough to know what will work and what won't. Where someone else who doesn't have the confidence may end up trying this and trying that and trying this, or maybe in trying all these things, they're always painting the same subject, but they're trying different things because they really aren't fully certain or sure of who they are in that space. Does that make any sense?
It does. Yeah. Yeah, I understand what you're saying, and that's, I guess that comes back to, there's times when I'll start the painting and I might be a little shaky about it, but once I start rolling into it and start thinking it through, and my confidence seems to come back, and the style, it always works out the way the style comes. I will envision a painting sometimes, and it will turn out differently, but it's a very subtle difference.
Yeah.
It's not a big
80-90%
drastic
of it's there. What you envisioned from the beginning, 80-90% of it is executed in the end, correct?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. There might be a few changes now and then, but most of it's there how I envision it. And sometimes, the way it comes out is even better than the way I envision it.
That's cool. That's cool.
Sometimes I can't even trust my own envisions on it. It's just, it works out better than I thought it would.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Here's a weird question that has nothing to do with what we were talking about. I'm listening to your accent. Where are you from, man?
I'm from Pennsylvania.
Oh, really? I'm in Pennsylvania too. What part?
I'm on Jim Thorpe.
Jim Thorpe. Oh, isn't Jim Thorpe like
Near
the Indian guy who was in the Olympics or something?
Yeah, they have him buried here. Yeah, I mean, Jim. It's near the Poconos of Pennsylvania.
Yeah, I think back in high school, I used to wrestle years ago, and I for some reason I think our school wrestled Jim Thorpe. Like, I don't know.
That's
why.
Possible. What part are you from?
Well, when I was wrestling at that time, it would have been up near Allentown in Salisbury.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I think it was only like, I think it wasn't even an hour. I don't think from Allentown.
No, it's about 45 minutes away from Allentown. Yeah.
Now, let me. In Jim Thorpe, the school up there is that the town with the school all the way up on that huge hill, or is that?
Yep.
Oh, yeah,
you're correct.
Oh, you know what it was? It was a wrestling tournament. That's what it was. Man, I don't even know how I remember this stuff. Wow. That's crazy. Okay.
Yeah. It's up on the hill. Yep. Big hill.
Yeah. Yep. That's cool, man. So, how were you born and raised in Pennsylvania and like around here your whole life?
I was near. It's called Stillwater. It was near Bloomsburg, Pennsylvania.
Okay. Yeah.
And I moved to Jim Thorpe about 10 years ago.
Nice.
But every time I talk to people, they think I'm from New Jersey.
That's what I thought at first.
Yeah.
Like, you sound very Jersey, man.
No.
That's cool. That's cool. So, Jay, there's a part of the show that I like to ask artists that I bring on to talk about this concept called agency. Okay, and what that basically is just kind of giving a shout out to your network of people or businesses, services. It's always people that really enable you to be you. And by that I mean, like, you're an artist, you're producing art. And so I wanted, to ask you who are like maybe three key components for Jay to produce a Jay Davenport painting. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I would have to say my agent, Paula Tillman. She's a great inspiration to me, and she definitely helps me to know where to place paintings and where to send some paintings. I may have a different view at times, but we usually come up with a good agreement on where and when to send a painting. I have to say my website lady who takes care of all that stuff, her name is Vicky Bueller. She takes care of my website for me. So all I have to do is send her an image and tell her what I need done, and she takes care of it. So that right there is a big help. That takes a lot of time off my hands.
Indeed.
And the framer is Chris Henderson at Delrose Awards. He does a lot of my framing, and which again just enables me to be able to paint more time. And there's so many little things with doing art that a lot of people don't understand. It's not just sitting and painting. There's so many other things that need to be done. Emails to galleries and stuff like that. So I have a small circle of people that help me out with those, and those are the prime ones though that I say I have to give my biggest props to for helping me to be able to continue to create art.
That's awesome. And would you encourage artists to find an agent?
It depends. I know a lot of agents. I have a unique relationship with my agent, and she basically helps me to continue to paint by giving me an allowance every month.
Oh wow, that's cool.
And I'm Yeah, and it's very. I don't think most normal agencies do that. Usually, the artist pays the agent,
Mm-hmm.
and this is kind of vice versa. And it's just she's able to help me, and then basically, so she gives me an allowance and allows me to paint and not have to worry financially sometimes
That's cool.
about where I might get my next dollar from. Sometimes when I'm in my low session, my low
Mm-hmm.
season,
Yeah.
uh,
So you can
it
just
helps me
produce
to
and build
continue to
inventory.
paint. Right, and I am under contract to paint so many a year for her,
Mm-hmm.
and she does make the decisions on where and when we send paintings.
That sounds fair.
So that yeah, so it's a give and take, but it works out for me and it works out for her, and I've enjoyed our relationship. We've been together for about 5 years now.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome, dude.
Yeah.
That's
So
really, really cool.
as far as an artist, finding an agent, I would have to say my advice would be just make sure you trust them.
Mm.
Because there's a lot of people out there that are just they're not good people sometimes. So just know who you're dealing with and trust the person.
Yeah, and if they're willing to put their money up where their mouth is, that means that they
Hmm.
trust you and believe in you. And
Right.
if they're like, hey, I can sell your work and da da da, but pay me, whatever. Um, not saying that's a negative or whatever, but it is something that you want to. It's very different. It's very, very different when they're saying, "Hey, I believe in you so much that I'll put my money down on the table, and to
Right.
make sure that you can be you." And that's
Right.
really
I
cool, man.
feel I feel very I'll say the word blessed to have had Paula in my life. She's been a big help and a great relationship.
That's awesome, man. Very cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. So I have to ask you the most important question that I've asked you so far now.
Okay.
What do you love to eat, man?
I love sushi.
Sushi.
That's my
Nice.
favorite. Yeah, that's one of my favorite foods. I was actually teaching a workshop in Scottsdale, Arizona.
Uh-huh.
I did it for numerous years. I'd go out every March and I would teach this workshop for art. And there's a restaurant there, and it was just a sushi restaurant. And I would eat lunch there and I would eat dinner there. And by the time the end of my week was up, they gave me a free T-shirt just because I gave them so much business that week. So
Hope you made
the
money on the
T-shirts,
workshop.
yeah, I did.
Okay,
But
okay.
the T-shirt actually says on the back, "I could eat this every day."
Oh, that's
And so,
cool. That's
yeah,
cool.
I'm a big sushi fan. I could eat sushi every day, and I really enjoy pasta too. So I'm a big
Yeah.
chicken parm fan, and
Oh God,
anything
I
with
love
pasta
chicken
in it.
parm. Oh,
Yeah, so
I
that's
just
my.
discovered chicken parm this year. Like
Did you?
I've seen people have it, and I used to work when I was younger in a Greek diner restaurant, and so I'd see it all the time. But for some weird reason, I just never went there, and I, it was every once in a while I get this weird thing where I just try something new, and when I say every once in a while, I mean like maybe every 5 or 6 years, like um,
Right.
and it just happened to be I just gave into it. I said, let me try that. And I was like, oh my God. And now I can't
Yeah.
stop. It's
Yeah. I make a good chicken parm. I can make a good one.
yeah. Now,
Yeah.
do you have like Italian background or is it just something that you like?
No, it's just something that I always liked, and there's a local farmers market near me that I get
Oh,
some good
wow.
chicken at, and I'll bread it, and I'll use linguine
Mm-hmm.
and lots of mozzarella. So I make a
Lots of
good chicken
mozzarella.
parm.
Nice,
Yeah,
nice.
gotta have lots of cheese. So
There's
I'm a big fan.
this
But
one restaurant. Mm-hmm.
I'll try any food once. I will eat anything that you put in front of me at least once just to
What's
try
the
it. I
craziest
love.
thing you've eaten?
I don't know. I had rattlesnake.
What? Was that in Arizona
Yeah,
or
that was in
Pennsylvania?
no, that was in Louisiana,
Wow. Well,
in
that
New
would make
Orleans.
sense.
Yeah, I
Dang.
had
Was it good?
rattlesnake.
Was it good?
Yeah, it was good, and I had alligator
Dude.
in Louisiana as well, and I guess octopus.
Yeah.
Octopus is one that I tried that I probably wouldn't eat again.
Oh, really? I
Yeah, I
tried
just didn't like
octopus
the
for the
texture.
first time this year. I was in Portugal and I was just like I was scared to do it. I fell in love with it, man. I was like,
Really?
"What? Yeah." I, I,
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up like when I was young, uh, in Puerto Rican culture, like they eat octopus, and
Okay.
I was like, hell no, right? And I just thought it was the grossest. I like squid though, uh,
Right.
but I was like octopus, no. And then I tried it because I was out at a restaurant with this girl, and I was like, I can't be a wimp, you know. So I'll try
Right.
this thing. I was like, holy crap! It was. I was surprised, man. It was so good. But
Yeah.
yeah. Okay.
Yeah. I
So
like to pass on it. I just don't like the texture of it, I guess. I don't know.
yeah, it does have a weird texture.
Yeah.
That was kind of strange. But so rattlesnake, alligator. Uh, that's pretty badass, man. That's
Yeah.
cool.
And what do they say? It all tastes like chicken.
Yeah, but with different textures.
It does. Yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah. I love all kinds of foods.
Is there any, like you were saying that you went to Scottsdale, Arizona? You did they bring you in to teach a workshop there?
Yes, I was going out there I probably did it for about 3 or 4 years. They would bring me out there, and yeah, it was nice because it was like a little vacation for me, even though I had to work.
Mm-hmm.
And it was at the Scottsdale Artist School.
Nice.
That's
That's
where I
cool.
was teaching. Yeah, yeah,
And
they
do
fly
you
you out
teach other
there. They
places?
put you. I do. I teach privately, and
Okay.
I teach at a place in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania,
Oh,
called the
okay.
Banana Factory.
Oh, I know the Banana Factory.
Yeah, I teach there on Thursday nights, a drumming class.
That's cool.
And I teach privately out of my own studio too, for those that are, somebody that's interested in like an apprenticeship, like we were
Mm-hmm.
talking about earlier. I do provide that in photorealism painting
Nice. Nice.
and drawing. Yep.
That's very, very cool, man. If you had students who wanted to come from out of state, like in study with you, like what would that look like?
Uh,
I mean, do you teach like a
Time
full
wise,
time? Yeah, like I mean, when you do the apprenticeship, I
yeah,
mean, are you set up to like have like are you doing like apprenticeship in terms of like classes, individual classes, or is it like they come into your studio and they're working there in like in that environment? Like, what does that look like?
yeah, yeah. They come into that's 3 days a week. They come in
Okay.
and they basically I teach so much, and then I let them do projects.
Mm-hmm.
uh, and they come in and they just kind of work at their own pace.
Yep.
And yeah, it's open, and then I'm there 10 hours a day, so they're welcome to stay 10 hours if they want, or they could stay 3 hours if they want, depending on how much they want to do. But it is open, and that's basically it. They just come in and do their work, and then I'm there to guide them if they need me,
Mm-hmm.
and then I'll once the time comes, I'll help them to I could direct them into presenting portfolios to galleries and stuff like that to
That's
promote
cool.
them themselves and stuff like that. So I will help them out with that as well.
That's awesome, man. That's awesome.
Yeah.
You know, and you're in there how many days a week?
Oh,
You
I'm in
personally,
there 6 days a week.
for 10 hours.
At least 10 hours. Yep.
Wow,
Sometimes
that's
more.
awesome.
Yeah.
I'm really getting a sense interviewing these artists, this common theme, and like art. It's very strange. It's, art oftentimes is looked at as very elitist type of thing, and yet in the production of it, it's almost very blue collar uh,
Yeah.
energy to it. You know what I'm saying? It's like it's something you get up and you have to go and punch your, you go to work, and
Right.
and and I just did a podcast with a fella a few hours ago and this morning, and saying that was his message: work, 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 work. It's like this is your job. You get up and you
It
go.
is your job.
That's
The
I
only
think
difference
yeah,
is
mhm,
that it's a matter of discipline. And
yes,
once again, that's where the passion comes in, because you have to stay passionate or you're not going to, you have to like what you're doing, and no matter what you do. And that's where the passion comes in though too, is you need to stay focused and really want to do what you're doing. And being an artist, there's a certain self-discipline that you must have, or
hmm
you're not gonna make it. And that's, the difference between punching a time clock and an artist is we don't have to punch a time clock, but you have to pretend you do.
yeah,
You know,
yeah,
we don't have to answer to a boss, but you have to pretend that you have to answer to a boss. So, there's a certain sense of discipline that you need to have and passion in order to make it work.
I remember years ago, my brother, who's this world class magician illusionist, he had this thing written on his door that said something like, "Develop good habits and then become a slave to them." And
Right.
it's
Yep.
like you have the illusion of freedom. I mean, and I say the illusion of freedom because it's not an illusion in the sense that you're actually free to do whatever you want with your time. Um,
Right.
but if you want to achieve something, then you really don't have you know you have the freedom to actually become very disciplined to what it is that you want to do. And
Right.
so and that's a beautiful thing with these conversations. That message is coming out a lot. Just this discipline is really the word.
Mm-hmm.
Just a discipline. You were calling it passion before, and then we kind of talked about it being hunger. Um, but added another word added to that would be discipline, uh, and
Right.
I- and I think that's one of the great benefits of entering into an apprenticeship is that you learn because you're in that environment. You see the artist coming in and putting the time in. You see the example of what it is to be an artist, where
Right.
college is kind of designed in a weird way, almost to produce a uh, like an employee, kind of version of an artist, not actually, you know, the the right kind of mentality. So it's very interesting.
Right. Right.
That's cool, man. So if people want to get in touch with you, how can they find you?
They can find my website is the letter J, then davenportart.com. They could get a hold of me through there, or they could email me at jdavenportart@yahoo.com.
And that's JAY, not just the letter J.
No, that's just the letter J. I'm
Oh,
sorry.
just the letter
Yeah.
J. Okay. Well, I'm
Yep,
glad I
just
cleared
the
that
letter
up.
J. Yeah, just the letter J, and then davenportart@yahoo.com.
Awesome, man.
And
Awesome.
I'm always I check my emails frequently, and I'm always here if anybody ever has any questions or I could help them in any way. I'm more than happy to help anybody.
Great. Great. Um, yeah, guys, go to to Jay's website. Take a look at what he's doing. And if anyone's listening to this who wants to develop their skills and be around the kind of energy and the personality that's winning at this, and primarily because they have the discipline and the passion and the hunger for it, and if that's the kind of energy you want to blossom in, then give Jay a call, especially if you're in the Pennsylvania area, East Coast, or you're willing to fly in. Um, and spend some time with Jay. If not Jay, find an artist, and this was Jay's advice, find an artist that you like and go pay them for their time to go study and learn under them, because that's where the real education is going to be. And then ultimately, if the trust and the relationship is fostered, you're also going to get access to a network of people that are going to be able to help you, really help you in your career. But before thinking about that stuff, focus on creating the art and being around the right people to enable you to do that. And Jay would be a great person to reach out to. Jay, thank you for coming on the show, man.
Hey, thanks, Don. It was a pleasure.
Hopefully we can go get some chicken parm together sometime, because we're not that far from each other. I'm down in Lancaster, so
if you're ever in Jim Thorpe, give me a yell. We'll work something out.
We will, man. All right, ciao. Thanks.
Thanks, Don. Bye-bye.
Core 80 really helped me learn how to see. And I know that's so basic, and as artists, people say, oh, you really have an eye. But you really don't learn to see until you understand this ancient secret, this mysterious grid that is behind all great works of art, that becomes the supporting structure that can strengthen your story when you are creating, when you're composing, when you're directing. The Core 80 course really helped me turn seeing into a creative superpower, because you have to understand how seeing connects to the feeling. And I always thought it was some magical thing. Like, I got the feeling part because, like many artists, I'm an empath. But having the course and understanding that, no, there's really a structure that strengthens the story and that can strengthen the story. The Core 80 course was super challenging. It was hard at first. How do you teach someone to see? Because we all have eyes, we all can see, but we all can't initially see until we understand the structure. We understand how everything fits together, just like a puzzle. The Core 80 really was, it was intense, and it was eye-opening. It was really mind-expanding. It doesn't matter whether you're a painter or a photographer or you do any kind of storytelling that includes visual imagery. This course is really going to give you a structure and a foundation that's going to strengthen your work.
In just 30 days, the Core 80 experience teaches you to decode the intentional design underneath great masterpieces. Through video lessons, assignments, and feedback, you learn to recognize the underlining structures like thrust maps, echoes, and gamuts that give master compositions substance and gravitas. Knowing how master artists and illustrators compose their artwork unlocks your ability to give your artwork more meaning and energy. Enroll today and get a 7-day no-hassle money-back guarantee at core80.com.